My name is Shirley Reynolds, and I have the honour of being the president of Soroptimist International of Melbourne Club. A little bit of housekeeping. Our keynote speaker, unfortunately, the daughter has tested positive for COVID on Monday, so we'll be actually Zooming her, hopefully live, rather than having her here in person. So. All fingers crossed that it'll go well. So, okay, we pay our respects to the Indigenous peoples of Australia and to the elders of the Wurundjeri tribe of the Kulin Nation. And we pay our respect to all the elders of the past, the present, and the future elders as they emerge. I'd like to welcome you as our speakers, Tanja Kovac, who will be doing it by Zoom, from Gen Vic, Sophie Arnold from the United Nations Association Victoria, our Soroptimist International Victorian President Karen Felsted, Kerry Boland from United Nations Victoria, and Maria and Beelan from SisterWorks, and our wonderful supporters, our two gentlemen in the audience today, Theo, who donated the raffle prize for a dinner for two at his restaurant Lemnos Taverna, and Martin Hooben, who donated the beautiful handmade chocolates which were in all your gift bags. So before you leave today, you're welcome to come and get a gift bag. So very welcome to our two gentlemen in the audience today. All our friends, and especially our Soroptimist sisters, welcome and thank you for your support. We have an apology from Dr. Katie Allen, but she sent us best wishes for a successful luncheon today. Now, SI Melbourne Club's luncheon today is a chance to celebrate at last the 100 years of Soroptimist International, 1921 to 2021. We had to cancel it twice last year, so in mid-January this year we decided that in March we'd go ahead. Doesn't matter what happens. So with COVID, nothing's certain these days. So, and to celebrate the achievements of the Soroptimist International women who have contributed to the work of Soroptimist International over the last 100 years, and perhaps raise a glass to the SI women of the next 100 years who will inherit a wonderful legacy of work done, because it is they who will create the future of SI as it travels into this next 100 years. Soroptimist International Melbourne Club is the oldest club in Victoria, 74 years this June, and it's the second club in Australia. So we have a proud heritage here in our club. All profits from the luncheon today and all monies donated and all the raffle money collected will go directly to support the work of an organisation called SisterWorks. SisterWorks is a not-for-profit social enterprise organisation based in Victoria, whose vision is an Australia in which all migrant, refugee and asylum seeker women are economically empowered and supported. Their mission is to provide these women with opportunities to build their confidence, their independence, and their skills to improve their economic outlook on life. Some more housekeeping. You will see small baskets on each table with a book of raffle tickets in it. They're all colour-coded. When you pull out your ticket, it's $2 a ticket or $3 for $5. And if you could leave the butt behind, because that way you'll go into the raffle draw, okay? We have 10 lovely prizes. We have a painting that's donated by a good friend and supporter of Soroptimist International, a beautiful artist, and well-known in artistic circles here in Melbourne, Angela Abbott. It's to the value of $750. There's dinner for two at Lemnos Taverna, donated by Theo. Thank you to Theo. 2 Royal Dalton figurines donated by a member of Soroptimist International of Melbourne. a luxury set of chocolates, bottle of champagne and 2 Royal Dalton champagne glasses. You can do that for your special night in with someone special. A kitchen and or camping set. There's a scarf and pamper beauty set. A watch. A coffee table book, produce to platter. And a luxury dusk set with the candles, scented candles and the infusers. And a SisterWorks hamper. Now SisterWorks have their display over there. You can actually buy from them if you wish today. And they have some information that I think they've put around on the tables, which is lovely. They do have their FPOS. If you don't have cash on you, you can actually purchase by FPOS. Now, if you wish to make a donation, you can make it direct into your basket without buying your raffle tickets. Or you can, if you don't have the cash, you can do it directly through SisterWorks on their FPOS machine. So either way, we ask you to really support SisterWorks and the work they do. It's extraordinary, and especially with the situation in Ukraine at the moment, following on so closely with the refugees that came in from Afghanistan. I think they're going to be very, very busy supporting women. And you'll notice the Soroptimist colours are blue and yellow. It just happens to be that they're the Ukrainian colours as well. So keep that in your mind, okay? So look, enjoy your entree. It'll be coming out pretty shortly. And we'll introduce SisterWorks. I might get them to come up now while the entree's coming out. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Maria and Belen from SisterWorks, who will tell you more about the work of the organisation SisterWorks. So please give a warm welcome to Maria and Belen.
Shirley, and thanks to the whole Soroptimist team for fundraising for SisterWorks with your 100th anniversary. It's a special event, so yeah, we're very glad to be here, so thanks so much for the support. So as Shirley said, SisterWorks is a non-for-profit organisation and we're based in Melbourne, Victoria, and our mission is to economically empower migrant, refugee and asylum seeking women. We do so through entrepreneurship, and that's reflected in our pop-up market today. We have a pop-up store where all the products are handmade by the women that we support. So we provide them with extensive training and mentorship to develop their own small businesses and be able to gain a bit of economic independence. Because it's challenging. The challenges that newcomers face is a lack of English language, but also qualifications aren't recognised when you sort of cross borders and you're crossing countries. So we have a lot of women that are highly qualified, experienced, skilled in their home countries, and it's not acknowledged in Australia, which is very unfortunate. So entrepreneurship is a really empowering pathway for them to gain economic independence without necessarily relying on the Australian system or being employed by an Australian company. But if they do wish to gain employment as well, we have extensive support programs to lead them in that direction, to give them pre-employment training, how to develop their CV, interview skills, to get them job ready. So there's lots of exciting things going on at SisterWorks, and we have one of our very own sisters, Belen, from the Philippines, here today to share her experience with the organisation and as a migrant in Australia. So I'll pass it over to Belen.
Thank you for having me. Good afternoon to the Soroptimist International women, to our SisterWorks sisters, and to all the women around the world. I am Belen. I am from the Philippines. I have 2 children, 3 grandchildren. I am a seamstress, and I live in Point Cook, Windham City. I just wanted to share my journey, Australian journey. When I came here 7 years back, what I noticed is I don't see anyone in neighborhood, in the street, and I tell myself, how could I make friends when I don't see anyone? So what I did, because I cannot also rely on my children because they're working, so what I did, I went to our local library and joined the Asian cultural group. But I struggled a bit because some of them are not really speaking English. And I have a bit knowledge of English too. And for a few meetings, I decided that this is not for me. So when we came here, I'm a little bit younger. So me and my husband joined volunteering, primarily to join the Australian workforce. But God maybe has other plans for me. We didn't land in employment, but through the people we met, I landed in the SisterWorks. So Brotherhood of St. Lawrence introduced me to SisterWorks because I get also short course from Brotherhood of St. Lawrence, the Stepping Stones. So when our mentor announced that there's a sewing job for SisterWorks, so I get the details and I booked for an appointment. It was a long journey because I am from the West. It takes me 2 hours travel by bus, by train, and by tram. And the first day we get lost. City Loop. Oh, we're City Loop. So that's the story, yeah. But when I came to SisterWorks Hub, it has a very welcoming environment, and I feel a sense of belonging. So I think I love this. And my first project was making a bag. I say bag because I have this experience. When I say bags, my other friends said, you know what is flying? No, not flying. It's something you put inside and carry. Oh, it's a bag. Oh, sorry, it's a bag. So I'm still learning, yeah. My first project was making bags from the banners of the city of Melbourne. And I took pride in it because I'm one of the helping the planet. That's why I took pride in it. So, I'm so proud. I'm always carrying my bag, my banner bag. And not only that, during lockdown, SisterWorks helps me a lot. I made face masks and I earn money at home. And then I have a lot of short courses at home also. And mental issues was not a problem for me because I'm happy and I'm earning. And also, SisterWorks also helps some of the aspects of my life. Once I belonged to the 2.7 million Australians who do not know how to use computer or low-level knowledge of computer or use internet or something. But through SisterWorks, I already know how to navigate, send some emails, and do some banking transaction. So I owe that a lot to SisterWorks. Actually, there are many funny stories, but I'm just cutting it short. But SisterWorks really helps me a lot, changed my life, because it does not only ignite my passion for sewing, but it ignites also my passion to serve the community. In the Wyndham City, our group is also a recipient of SisterWorks projects like the food handling, because we're going to have sizzling for fundraising for Bunnings. But there are so many women from the West who would like to avail the services of SisterWorks. But when I told them, I am having this intermediate sewing in SisterWorks, I said, where? In the city. Oh, sorry, Belen, I cannot go with you. I have some children to pick up by 3 o'clock. So I think if given the help, SisterWorks could expand to the West. I'm sure many women from the West will really have the services of SisterWorks. But we cannot, I can only do a bit. SisterWorks can only do also a bit, but we need help from you, my sisters, and think SisterWorks can expand their services and get more women. There are a lot of women out there that needs their services that they really don't know because they do not integrate into our society. There are young women, young families, but they cannot really get for so many hours because of the children. And I thank you and I thank SisterWorks for having all the things that help me integrate in the Australian society. Although I didn't love the employment sector, but I did a lot of my hobbies with SisterWorks. I'm doing this scrunches, yeah, because I find it really fashionable. I find it fashionable. And thank you so much. And mabuhay tayong lahat. Mabuhay ang Soroptimist International, who has 3,000 clubs and more than 8,000 members around the world. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much to Beelin and Maria, and thank you to Beelin for talking about her special circumstances as well. So please give as generously as you can to. It's a wonderful organisation, and they do such a lot of good work with among the refugee women, and especially at the moment, it's so critical. The efforts that they put in, and they work voluntarily, so please open up your wallets as much as you can afford. Thank you. Please. It gives me much pleasure to introduce Sophie Arnold from the United Nations Australia Association Victoria Division. And she will propose the toast to SI Melbourne Club. So, Sophie is a journalist by training and covered politics and industrial relations before becoming a media advisor to the Victorian government ministers and then Premier Joan Kirner. She previously ran a successful media practice, providing writing, editing and communication services to a range of government, corporate and not-for-profit agencies. And it gives me great pleasure to give a warm welcome to Sophie, but also make her welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Shirley. Thank you, everybody. We're very lucky to have Shirley on our board, and Kerry Boland as well, who's here today. Shirley is co-convener of our Status of Women Committee, and Sheila and some other people are here that have been with that committee. The committee meets monthly, brings together a range of women's organisations to discuss gender equality, but in the broadest sense in terms of the impact it has on other issues and how it's impacted on by other issues, including major challenges such as climate change. So we're very lucky to have this group of people. And I've got to know the Soroptimist International, several of your members over the time, so I was very pleased when Shirley extended this kind offer to me. We do a lot of our work through the focus on the Sustainable Development Goals, and I speak to a lot of organisations about localising the goals and about acknowledging how much what we're doing in Australia is contributing to that global agenda, which I know will resonate with you today because it's a similar approach to Soroptimist International, how you may contribute at a local level, but as part of a global focus and a global agenda. So it's great to have these links, and I know Shirley and Sheila know that there are a lot of Soroptimist International members who are also members of the UN Association of Victoria. So it's a great pleasure of mine to be asked to propose the toast to Soroptimist International Melbourne on the occasion of the centenary of the organisation. I'd like to offer my very best wishes to the organisation and to the Melbourne Club which has worked and achieved so much over its 75 years. And I now ask you all to be upstanding. Wish all members of Soroptimist International congratulations and much success in the next 100 years.
Everyone, I'd like to introduce now the Victorian President of Soroptimist International, Karen Felsted. Please make her welcome. She's actually come down from Ballarat today to share this celebration with us, so please make her welcome.
Thank you, Shirley, and thank you everyone today. I'd like to thank Sophie very much for the toast to Soroptimist International for our 100th celebration, and also congratulate SI Melbourne on the fact you've been a club for such a long time as well. So thank you, and I do hope that you enjoy your lunch today. It's been lovely already. And best wishes to everyone for the next 100 years as well. Thank you.
Welcome, Tanja, and thank her very much for being able to do this by Zoom today. Tanja, we'd like to let you know that from all of us here, we hope your daughter is coming along okay. So she has our best wishes. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce Tanja Kovac. She's the CEO of Gender Equity Victoria. It's the peak organisation for women, gender equality and the prevention of gendered violence in Victoria. She's the Senior Fellow, Gender Equality at progressive think tank Per Capita, and a writer and director at her own communications consultancy, Kovac and Company. She has managed several small non-profit organisations in faith, women's and human rights sectors, but her research, policy, writing and advocacy passion is gender equality. Tanja has extensive experience with print, radio, TV and online media. Her writing has featured in The Age, Daily Telegraph, Crikey, Mamma Mia and more. So please give a warm welcome to Tanja Kovac.
Centenary Celebration. I'm really sorry that I'm only a virtual presence today, particularly considering we've been working so hard across the pandemic to actually get me in the room. Unfortunately, COVID-19 strikes again with my 13-year-old daughter contracting the virus over the long weekend, so we are in ISO, including isolating from each other in the house. So instead of being in person, I'm coming to you from a room of my own in my home in Colorado in the Dandenong Ranges. It's Wurundjeri country, and so I take this opportunity to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which I'm living and meeting with you today. Pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. I acknowledge that these lands were never ceded in battle or bargain. They always were and they always will be Aboriginal lands, and I commit Gender Equity Victoria to a pathway of truth-telling, reconciliation and justice. And I do this not only because it's the right thing to do after we stole land and wages and generations of children from their mothers, or because our country will never be whole or fully realised until we come to terms with our relationship to First Nations people, but also because the journey towards gender equality is intimately bound to the pursuit of justice for people of colour. The oppression of First Nations people and people of colour is the same oppression of women and gender diverse people, and we won't have equality, peace or a sustainable world unless we work together united against the forces that seek to hurt and divide us. And I know you believe in this project because the Soroptimist ideal of aspiring for the best for all was transformational in its scope. In 1921, when brave and determined women, having lived through the losses of the Great War and also a greater pandemic, saw a future for women involved in the recovery of the world, where they would use their own resources, relationships, networks and power. Kindness, care, empowerment, education, peace. This was a powerful promise of sisterhood, a world of partnership and sustainability, not competition and destruction. So I congratulate you all on working so diligently in the furtherance of these goals for more than a century. It is a little bit sobering, though, to think that, 100 years later, we're entering the third year of a COVID-19 pandemic, and it looks like Europe is again on the brink of some horrible world war, driven by the bizarre ravings of a fascist leader. The goals of the Soroptimists, indeed feminists organising together everywhere, can sometimes still seem very far from reach. The World Economic Forum predicts that the global gender gap in leadership is not going to close for another 135 years. 26 of those years have been added on due to COVID-19. This means that not only will I not see gender equality in my lifetime, which I find very frustrating, neither will my daughter, and possibly not even my granddaughter. And this is the way of gender equality work. The pace is slow, and it's why intergenerational sustainability and organisations such as yours are so important. I discovered recently that my great-grandmother, Adeline Elizabeth Windle, or Ada for short, was something of a suffragist. In my late nan's personal effects, I found my great-grandmother's permission to vote card, and I'm going to share it with you. I understand you'll be able to see this up on the screen. Can you see that? Yeah. This is an incredible document. I noticed that they spelt her name wrong, Adelaide, but she's corrected it when she signed. This was her permission to vote card from 1905. Qualified in respect of womanhood. We'd only just got the right to vote when she was able to use this. Her belief in that right, her pride and understanding of its historical significance has really enabled me to be where I am today, and I thank you, Ada, for having made that possible. Would my great-grandmother be proud of where we are today? Do you think the Soroptimists of the past would be overjoyed by our achievements? I think so, probably. It has been a bright and brilliant past of feminist activity, but I really can't help thinking about the future now. What duties do I have to provide a better world for my granddaughters who follow me? I mentioned before the World Economic Forum's Global Gender Gap Index, and if you're not familiar with this index, I really encourage you to have a look at it. There are a number of sub-indices inside that index where it forms the view about the performance of nations on gender equality across the world. And one of those indices is on economic participation and wealth. When you drill down into that data, you find out that the economic wealth gap is actually a further 267 years away. I just want you to process that for a moment. It will be 2,289 before we close the global gender wealth gap. Well, I don't know about you, but that is just not acceptable to me. And I have to be part of increasing the pace for change. So for GenVic, this has meant that in our revised strategic plan, we've made gender economic justice and equity our first goal. We need to do this to address individual women's poverty. We need to do it to ensure that there is long-term sustainability of the gender equality project. And we have to do it because we need women to start having enough money so that they can invest in the creation of a care economy and climate change adaptation and peace. Focusing on economic justice and equity means concentrating on the hard task of redefining our economic system. We have to do this for climate change. We have to do this for equality. We have to transform from a laissez-faire free market system to a care economy. Whenever I talk about dismantling global capitalism as we know it, people assume that I'm some kind of radical Marxist. But the truth is that both the radical free market libertarian Adam Smith and the communist Karl Marx unilaterally decided that women's labour was unproductive. The work of caring for sick people and the infirm, of nurturing young and ageing loved ones, of domestic cleanliness and safety, of teaching rules and responsibilities to children, this essential work was deliberately excluded from both by both the men of the right and the left from our economic paradigm. I first came to realise and have an appreciation of the significance of this when I had my own children, without the benefit of paid parental leave. I used my time as a young mother, at that point working for Emily's List Australia, which I did with the lovely Sophie Arnold, who's joined you today, advocating for a national scheme in Australia, which we now have. Certainly not the best in the world, but it's great to have one. And I'm glad that I was able to contribute to that so that generations of mothers have got it better than I had. But I started to really understand the economic fiction on which our whole economic structure is based. I'd been sold the myth at university that I could have it all, but now very poor ancient policy decisions and legislative misogyny was preventing me from being both nurturer and producer. So I turned to Professor Rhiannon Eisler, who's the author of The Chalice and the Blade and The Real Wealth of Nations, and I studied under her care economy program and learnt about how the entire financial system of the world has been designed to exclude women. And I share that learning here with you because it's significant. Around the same time that the Soroptimists were forming, men were also gathering to reform the economic system after war. In the formidably stunning Mount Washington Hotel in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, after decades of negotiation and through wars, the United Nations Monetary and Financial Conference decided what would be considered valuable and as part of gross domestic product. GDP, you hear about it every night on the news. Who came up with that? Well, let's have a look. 730 delegates from 44 allied nations. And it's really insightful to look at the list of negotiators. Frederick, Leslie, Arthur, Renee, Roberto, Jeremy, James, Louis, Jan, Carlos, Eduardo, Ladislav, Ephraim, Pierre, Kyriakos, Ibrahim, Wilhelm, Augusto, Mikhail, John, Henry, Dean, Harry, and Vladimir. All men. And in that forum, they decided two things: that the work at home, caring and raising children, caring for aging and ill loved ones, early childhood development of young people by parents, food preparation and cleanliness and the health of our homes, none of this was productive or of value, according to all of them. And so they excluded it from GDP. And they also made the decision in that forum to decide that our environment was also valueless. The air we breathe, the land that we walk on. Those two decisions underpin all of the problems that we have today. We have an economic system that does not value so-called feminised work or the beauty and security of our environment. The gender pay gap and gendered workforce segregation exist because we have been made to believe that feminised labour is of no value compared to masculinised labour. That this kind of work is always going to be a drain on the budget bottom line. This conference established the economic system that we have today, and it's this system that is enabling 99% of the world's wealth to be held by 1%, and a system that has entrenched global poverty and gender inequality and brought a climate disaster to our doorstep. And as long as we allow gross domestic product alone to be used to drive our economic frameworks for the world, we will not have the kind of world we hope to live in. I'm definitely aware of the enormity of bringing about a care economy. In my view, it's ultimately going to take some kind of global strike, an international version of what Iceland did. And Iceland, as a consequence of their national women's strike, are now the global leaders on the World Economic Forum's Global Gender Gap Index. They've got the narrowest gap in the world. We will need to down tools as women, but I don't think we're ready for that yet. So how do you actually change an entire economic system? The late Reverend Desmond Tutu, when asked how to dismantle apartheid, which must have seemed, as impossible as the project that I'm talking about today, responded famously by saying, "How do you eat an elephant? A bite at a time." I don't want to talk today about food metaphors, though. People have been sending me beautiful screenshots of the food that you're having today, so I am quite envious. And there are no elephants in this room. So a better question for us to ask as gender equality advocates is, how do we turn small waves of reform into a tsunami? We've chosen waves as our metaphor for the gender equality movement, and I embrace it, because waves are powerful, they crest and they wash away things, they're endless, they build and mount. So let's have a look at what we've been doing with our waves and what we're going to need to do into the future. Because the first wave was really physiological. It was about function and representation and being seen. We needed to be physiologically represented in places of power and to get critical masses of women at the decision-making table. That's what the suffragists wanted. And while we're talking about critical mass, what is critical mass? It's at least 30%. You can aim for 50-50. That's what we need, that's what we want. But if you can't get to 30%, you're just not going to get any change at all. The second wave, which we talk about as being in the 1960s and 70s, was really about securing our bodily safety. Reproductive and sexual health became a prime driver of that time. The third wave returned to representation, asking for us to better represent women in all our diversity through an intersectional lens. The fourth wave, which they are now saying we're in now, is really marked by the Me Too movement, and again it returns to safety. The lived experience of women and gendered violence is marking our work in the fourth wave. What I want to see happen in the fifth, sixth and seventh wave is that we move off what I consider to be the lowest rungs of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, physiological representation and bodily safety, and see us start to move towards greater self-assertion of the world that we want, a world where the work that we do to love and to care for families and our planet comes first. To achieve that in the fifth wave, where would we need to start? What would it need to look like? Well, first of all, we have to measure and understand what it is that a care economy looks like. And for that, to do that, we have to get to terms with the value of the caring work that we do at home. And that means data and investment analysis, like something like the Time Use Survey, which is conducted at a national level and has had its budget cut within the Australian Bureau of Statistics by both Liberal and Labor governments. We need a time use survey to determine just how much time women are giving to free domestic labour and the caring and raising of children compared to men. At the moment, the gap between men and women is huge. In Victoria, the value of the unpaid care economy has been estimated at $205 billion. But of course, we don't value that. We don't include that assessment. And so if we're going to get on top of talking about making love and care essential to our economic development into the future, we have to start getting control of the data analysis. And we have to fight for that. We have to fight for that within Treasury, which is why GenVic is spending a lot of time talking about gender-responsive budgeting. It is not good enough for our treasuries to say they don't know how to apply a gender lens to a budget. They can't ignore the concept of the care economy. They can't ignore the fictions that have wrongly defined the economic frameworks, which is why we keep calling for an analysis of government expenditure with a gender lens, why we prioritise bidding in successive budget cycles on the things that women want, and why we keep talking about how the care economy is the future of economic development in Victoria and Australia. And ultimately, we are going to need to take action through organising to demonstrate at a global level that the work of care and love that we perform in our homes and for our loved ones is of value, that our environment, the air we breathe, the sun, the land on which we work, is of value. COVID-19 presents a big opportunity for us because we've discovered that feminised labour, that health of our people, the care of our children, the distribution and security of food, in the food supply, the cleanliness of our homes, that's essential to survival. It's the scaffolding on which all the other economic activity relies. It's the essential work, not mining and construction, not banking, This is why we're going to be focused on the future work of GenVic on gender, economic equity and justice, and we invite the Soroptimists of Victoria to join GenVic on this work. Of course, this is not the only thing that we're working on. Some of you may have seen our Sick of Small Change campaign. For those of you who don't know, we have a women's health crisis in Victoria. Women's health services in our state have produced and had for many years a Victorian Women's Health Atlas that collects local government level data looking at the differences at a gender level between men and women mostly at this point, though we acknowledge that there are also differential impacts in health for gender diverse people as well, of various diseases and indicators of health. And let me give you a few headlines. Women in Victoria are currently being hospitalised for self-harm at double the rate of men, 65%. 38% of Victorian women have now been diagnosed across their lifetime with anxiety and depression. In some parts of our state, in Gippsland, where they've been hardest hit by bushfire and the pandemic, it's actually up to 50% of the women's population has been diagnosed with anxiety and depression. Half of the women in Gippsland have got a mental health disorder. From a physical fitness perspective, we've had a 36% increase in heart disease. I don't have time today to go through all of the various indicators that are showing us that there is a crisis in women's health in Victoria. We need funding to be focused on addressing poor outcomes and not ticker box outputs. So too much of government is focused on ticking a box that, we've got a program here and we provide this over there without ever looking at whether or not any of that activity is actually driving down ill health or improving outcomes for women. And our campaign of Sick of Small Change is asking for an enormous uplifting investment in the primary prevention of women's health, 117 million, that's what it's going to take. 117 million over 4 years. You can imagine what the government's response to that is. What? The other piece of work that we're doing at the moment is also around implementing the Gender Equality Act in Victoria. For those of you who don't know, in 2020, an amazing piece of legislation was passed in the state of Victoria, the first of its kind in the country, that provides a framework for all public sector organisations, and there's 300 plus of them, to begin to transform for gender equality and to do so in a staged, monitored and slowly, progressively implemented way through under the review of a new Commissioner for Gender Equality in the public sector. Our organisation has been working with a number of public sector entities to help them make that transformation. And that's by the end of this month, 300 organisations must have a gender equality action plan to discuss how they are transforming to make their workplaces more gender equal. For those of you who may have seen the gender pay bot, which was naming and shaming on Twitter, all of the corporate organisations were giving themselves a pat on the back on IWD, and this clever little app, anonymous bot on Twitter was going out, and every time one of those corporate entities did a tweet saying that they were, fantastic on International Women's Day, this bot shared the gender pay gap of that organisation. So the Gender Equality Act isn't going to do that level of naming and shaming, but some of its power is the fact that the Commissioner can point out which organisations are poor performers in closing their gender pay gap, in providing a gender equal workforce and an intersectional gender equal workforce. We're really proud to be part of that work. I want to come back though a little bit to just as I wrap up today around economic equity and justice being not just a really big macro project, but also something that is micro related within the movement for gender equality itself. One of the reasons Soroptimist International has been so successful is because it's sustained its endeavours independent of government and corporate interests. And in my view, this is the only way to run a gender equality organisation. Anything else puts at great risk the project, a risk of enormous compromise and a risk of backlash. The future of gender equality, that bright future that you're looking for, really lies in the great wealth and power of women moving their own billions. The hard-fought aims of the first and second wave and third wave feminists need to be built on so that the wealth that we've created for ourselves is freed for future investment in the activities and causes that we think are of value. Creating an independent gender equality movement that is not subject to corporate and business interests is not easy. For 30 years, Victorian women didn't have a peak organisation at all to harness their interests. And the only way that Gen Vic was created was because there was a gender equality strategy in 2017 which provided the foundational money to create that organisation. There are peak organisations for everything in Victoria: business, unions, childcare operators, the timber industry, palliative care. It's hard to believe that there hasn't been one for women until the last 5 years. You need one because that body is the body that unites everyone around common interests of gender equity, common interests of women's organisations, and is a constant presence in negotiations over the state and federal budgets, demanding that women get their fair share. So it's a big piece of work that we do. To give you an understanding of what we're up against, the average amount of investment over the last 20 years in the state of Victoria for dedicated gender equity activities is $4 million per annum. It's not a lot of money. Gen Vic has 50 members. If that $4 million went to just our members and was split evenly, we could barely pay the wage for one woman in each organisation. And when you compare that amount of money to what else gets invested in the state budget, it's completely paltry. I became very acutely aware of this when I worked in government as the Chief of Staff to the late Fiona Richardson, the first Family Violence Prevention Minister and Minister for Women. When we were establishing the gender equality strategy, the only amount that was allocated to that strategy, we fought hard, but the only amount that we could get up was $5 million for the whole strategy. I was bitterly frustrated by that. What I was even more frustrated about was when the budget came out and underneath the line item of $5 million for the gender equality strategy was a line item for the establishment of a high-performance golf centre. Guess how much they received? They received $8 million. Now, those two figures sat side by side in the budget papers, so clearly nobody in the Treasury had thought it was a problem or had thought to apply a gender lens to the document to see that these two disturbing figures, the entire state's first ever gender equality strategy and a high-performance golf centre would be, sitting side by side. It's just beggars belief. Some of our advocacy now is driven to try to increase investment, and we've had some early successes. In 2021 financial year, we had an 845% increase in dedicated gender equity investment. So it was a huge response to some of our campaigning. But the year after that was back to business as usual, so we go back to $4 million again. Many of our members are now starving for cash because they've got important gender equality work to do. They want to increase the pace for change. They can't pay for their staff to do it because they just haven't got the funds. Something I've learned from First Nations women in this country is that you cannot rely on a handout from government. You can't expect the structures of your oppressors to help you with your freedom. This is why so many Indigenous organisations today are focused on empowerment and entrepreneurialism. They want to control their own cash. They don't want to be compromised by government ties. It's Gen Vic's vision that we will be a peak organisation completely independent of government within the next 5 to 10 years, so that we can be free and strong, uncompromising voice for gender-based social change that's going to enable us to make very significant contributions to closing the economic gender gap. Your organisation, I take inspiration from you, has built itself through membership and donations. It's made itself self-sufficient. As somebody who managed Everly's List Australia, I know how hard that actually is. It's tough. And I know you must feel like you're running every year, from empty pocket to empty pocket. But I believe it's the only way to stay true to the goals and to stay sustainable without compromise. And I see today that you're also giving to SisterWorks. This is a good organisation too, prioritise will work too, because they are looking to build their strength through entrepreneurialism and supporting women to be self-sufficient. I actually believe that when women are organising together like this, it actually represents a very terrifying thing to mainstream power. The power of interests that are only focused on money, the power of interests that are only focused on war, the destruction of families, cultures, our environment. If we don't give them our money and our worth, and we direct it to our projects and our definition of worth and value, it starts to change the paradigm. Things are looking quite bleak right now, I have to say. It's been, sitting in my little home and feeling like the pandemic is literally around the corner from me, and watching things unfold at a global level. It's hard not to feel afraid a little bit of what the future brings, particularly for my children. What gives me hope is something that I really believe in. I believe that it will be women who rescue the world. It's not going to be a Marvel superhero. It's not going to be a second coming. It will be women. A wave of women so undeniable that it will heal and protect the earth. And I don't think I'm going to live to see that tsunami wash away the old ways of doing things, but I can throw my sweat, my femo juice into that ocean of change. And I call for you on your 100th anniversary to do the same. Thank you.
I'll get you to stay on. I'll introduce Anne Binkley, a member of Soroptimist International Melbourne, to actually offer thanks to Tanja.
Tanja, I'm sorry, I can't look you in the eye. I can turn around and try to look at you, but I don't think you see me. I'd like to thank you for the very inspiring and very educational and very thought-provoking presentation that you gave. I can say from personal experience as a woman of elder years that I have experienced much of what you have talked about, and I have seen the progress that we have made, and I'm very proud of the progress that Soroptimists have made, but much needs to be done, and it's like two steps forward, one step back. And I think you've offered us some really good ideas as to how we can go in the future and do some of the things that we need to do and things that have to be done for our society. And I thank you very much. It's a very difficult time for you in isolation, but making this time to give us the encouragement and the inspiration and making it so that it would be possible for us to have another 100 years in which we as Soroptimists make a difference, not only for the women of the world, but for the world in general. So thank you very much, Tanja.
Thank you, Tanja, and thank you so much for giving up your time, and look, best wishes to you at this time for your daughter as well. So thanks very much, Tanja.
Thank you so much. Did anyone have any questions or anything? I'm still here for a little bit, but if you're running out of time, I understand.
Does anybody have any questions that they'd like to ask Tanja? while she's still on. I think you must have answered a lot of our questions, Tanja, so thank you. And listen, I'll be in touch, so.
Take care, enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Thanks, Tanja. I'd sincerely like to thank Sue Whitehead, Melbourne Club's treasurer, Yahweh Hung and Linda Bainham, our IT specialists, who've worked tirelessly since Monday night to get Tanja live. And thank you to Angelina, who's been a tower of strength here at William Angliss, to Robin Byrne, our club secretary, and Carol Harper and Caroline Young, who were a part of our original committee, and members of a club who donated raffle prizes to Theo for the dinner for two, SisterWorks for their hamper of products there, and to Martin for your chocolates that are in your gift bag. So thank you so much to all those who've supported our raffle, so and our gift bags. And I want to thank Tanja, particularly under the circumstances, to be able to pull this off and to give the speech that she did has been absolutely fantastic. And to Sophie Arnold for all her support from the United Nations, and to, in particular, to Maria and Beelan for coming along today, and our two names were what were intrigued me in the first place for choosing your project. Because for those of you who don't know, Sorrow Sister is sister, and Optima is the best. So women at their best, helping other women to be the best, and to have a sister organisation working for refugees, particularly at the moment, it's very important. So thank you very much, Maria and Beelan, for giving up your time today and coming. So yes. And I'm not sure where she is, but Angelina, if she's here, I'd like to really thank her for above and beyond the help that she's given us today to put this on, and to all the students as well for the wonderful service that we've actually had. And please pay our compliments to the students who've actually cooked for us today. So thank you so much.